Hi there! It's time to look at Ethereum through the Wyckoff lens again. If you're new to my sessions, here are the 3 key items I will cover during the session. So let's start with the weekly chart of Ethereum. Here we're seeing a white candlestick to start off with this week after 4 weeks of decline. And last week I already shared that at this level of around 2,800, you see the green key level over here, there is a dual support. So as I said, there should be a stronger rebound at this level. And indeed, to start off with this week, we see this happening. So it's expected, but it's not the end. Okay, be really careful of these kind of rebounds during the leg going downwards, because if you jump in, make sure you have your stop loss tightly followed, because the drop may not be over yet, or maybe even far from over. So looking at this, you can quickly see the long wick from last week. There was quite a bit of buying when the price went below the green key level of 2,800, as well as the ceiling of the long-term playground zone. I'll mention or explain the long-term playground zone in a second if you're new to my sessions. So the thing over here is the bulls defended last week, avoiding Ethereum getting into the accumulation cycle. As of now, this may be the final sign of weakness and final last point of supply before Ethereum fully gets back to accumulation. Okay, previously we already put in this tag asking when Ethereum comes down to challenge all these levels from the 3,005 to 3,002 and the intermediate level at around 3,100, eventually at this dual support level, it finally seems to rebound. But like I said, we still have 6 days and 6 hours left. So how it happens in the next couple of days will be key, because this candle can turn red after a few days. So this is not a must that it ends up with an LPSY. Last time, just in March this year, okay, not very long ago, we had that around or below the green key level actually. Okay, but that was a distribution at a lower level. Okay, that upthrust period. You see, the sign of weaknesses actually got to the yellow key level of 2,500. But this time, even though if it has such a rebound around that level, it better happen above the yellow, because otherwise if it goes lower, I will consider it has entered the accumulation cycle already. Last time the accumulation cycles, you can consider it started somewhere near the red key level of 1950. Okay, and selling climax ended up around the center line of the long-term playground zone. So it's time to explain to you what the long-term playground zone is. All right, bear with me if you have been with me for a while. I know you are very familiar with this already. So the long-term playground zone, I have this channel box or this zone for all the coins. Basically, I track it from the very early days, in this case for Ethereum, starting from 2017. About 70–80% of the time, Ethereum's price has been trading within this area. Okay, only the crazy distribution climaxes or the tests went above this area. And now we are about to re-enter this zone. And Ethereum's long-term playground zone is similar to Bitcoin, that it's not entirely flat, it's not horizontal. I've given it a bit of inflation factor, okay, assuming that the base price of Ethereum, similar to Bitcoin, will rise along with time. Of course, not as crazy as the distribution hike, okay, it's a gradual rise. Alright, but for a lot of other altcoins, they're pretty much flat. As you can see, it makes sense if you look at other sessions of mine. Okay, So that has explained the big picture. Upside, some people, comment like in some other sessions, asking me why there's no why I always mostly talking about downside. What's the upside then? Sometimes I do forget. Sorry about that when I was too excited talking about it. The trend is still heading south. I'm still keeping this as a 10% chance, while towards the accumulation it looks like it's 90%, because sometimes it just went too low to a point that you would think, okay, it's probably time to start an accumulation, and then all of a sudden something happened or something got announced, and then people jumped in and give you another all-time high. If you look back, this wasn't as well. It was almost, because the that automatic reaction was so low, but that was 2021. It was too early in the days, and it gets to fluctuate even more. But look at the cycle during 2024, from January all the way into this year. That upthrust ended in December. So that entire year for Ethereum last year was a distribution cycle. And when people was thinking in September, it's probably the end of Ethereum's distribution and it may re-enter accumulation, suddenly it pops up to show an upthrust. However, it's not too far from the actual decline to the accumulation. So that's why I'm keeping 10% chance for it to come back to show at least a second test, maybe challenging the purple key level of 4,000. Okay? But that has to have some very good news to support this move. Whether it's really a good news or just a neutral news being sold as good news, it doesn't matter. As long as people buy in and they go, put money into Ethereum, that's all it needs. Okay? So that's the upside. Very low percentage, low chance, but it had happened before. Okay? So I'm showing you this, giving you this idea. And even if it re-enters an accumulation, it doesn't mean it takes a year and a half all the time. Look at what happened during March this year. It quickly accumulate, show us a strong rebound to the automatic rally, trade sideways just to do the last shakeout, and in June it started to climb to the climax we saw in mid-August. Alright, so that's the all-time high. Let's go to the daily. Here, the downtrend continues and still trading on the weaker side of the air hockey table. So again, if you haven't heard about this term, I use them interchangeably. So either it's like a channel box or it's an air hockey table. Reason, if I switch it to a line chart, you see, when you play air hockey, it bounces between the two edges of the table, right? In this case, there's also a center line that's taking effect. So you see that the price, when it gets very close to the edges, or when it gets to the center line, sometimes it bounce off from the center line, and then eventually also bounce towards the edges, depending on which side it's been trading. In a line chart, you don't see it actually touches the edges. But if I switch back to the candlestick chart, you see, it gets to the edge quite a number of times. Sometimes the tags are blocking it, but you see the wicks. The wicks basically gets to the edge. Alright, so that's what I'm tracking, or how I'm tracking the trend. So when we have these air hockey tables, combined with these key levels or intermediate levels, we'll be able to see or roughly guess when a breakout can potentially happen. Meaning getting outside of a trend or slipping outside of an uptrend. Okay, so here we are still on the weak side. So when a price is going through a downtrend, we need that to move towards the stronger side, stronger half of the table. in order to get a chance to break out. As of now, it's pointing towards Jan 3rd or Jan 2nd, sometimes near the end of this year. But of course, it can climb higher to catch this window, pointing towards mid-December. Assuming it can go above the intermediate level of 3070, as well as this light blue key level of 3200. Okay, that's not easy. That's probably where, when it's said in the beginning, the last LPSY would come. This time it kind of matches for the daily and the weekly chart. Not always the case. Sometimes they are just not in sync because things happen much more frequently in the daily chart. And remember, if you go online and look at a lot of charts, or go to websites that talks about or teach about Wyckoff, you usually see charts, weekly charts, or even monthly charts. You seldom see daily charts because it's not designed for this kind of frequency. Okay, weekly is the one that I normally look at. Daily is more, discussing with you, exploring something more interesting. Let's try plugging in and see what do we find, right? But sometimes we do encounter challenges when trying to do this because sometimes it's just moving so frequently that it seems it doesn't make sense. All right, but having said that, it's still good fun to look at how this eventually gets to the very low point or the start of the accumulation cycle. So as of now, we're still waiting for this preliminary support area to show up and eventually the selling climax. All right, last time over here I finished around the orange key level of 2200. Okay, this time, or as of now, we're only $743 from that level. Would it end up here, or would it end lower than the red key level of 1950? Because I believe I shared in one of the sessions before that this was the spring, the lowest point during April. Okay, it's not like 2 years ago, it's this April. We went to this level. So would we go back to 1400 or 1500? That's a possibility because look at what where 20 to 23 hibernation period was. Okay, some people said we'll never get back to those levels, but what happened in just April this year? It confirmed that we can. So be really careful while we're hoping for a selling climax to appear around the orange key level. There's still a chance for it to get below the red. Okay, so that's for Ethereum. Thanks for joining me. See you in